Anyway, Catherine Haken from Haken Relocation Services. I'm here this morning to talk to you about the services of senior move management and what we do to assist older clients in all the aspects of relocation and downsizing. So I'm going to explain what I actually do as a senior move manager, how my role is important in the community, and also that we have an ageing population here in the UK, as we do everywhere, and how our role is actually going to be a lot more important as time goes by. What we actually do, we assist older clients with all the aspects of downsizing, relocation. We help with all the emotional and physical aspects of that. We use our experience and qualifications to plan, coordinate and project manage their move for them, so that we remove the stress from the client and their families and make sure that their home is safe where they're going to move to, and that it is fit for purpose. I basically, just to give you a quick rundown on the formation of Haken Relocation Services, as was already mentioned by Stuart, I started my life as a nurse. After a few years in nursing, realised that perhaps it wasn't the vocation for me. Spent 2 years backpacking around the UK and then went back to college in New Zealand and studied interior design. I then spent the next 25 years working in that capacity, mainly in Australia. I moved to Australia and spent 20 years living there. And I've also moved about 20 times in 25 years, so I have a huge lot of experience in what it is and how stressful it can be to downsize and relocate, and have lived in 3 different countries. Several years ago, I was working in the interior decorating industry in London, and after the crash things became quite difficult. My hours got reduced, and it was about that time that I thought I actually wanted to change my career path. But I also wanted to use the skills that I'd gained in my nursing, decorating and also relocation. At the same time, my parents were both in very poor health in New Zealand, and I needed to go down there and help them with all the processes of moving. And just realised how stressful it was, and that not everybody had family and friends around to help them do that. And I came back to the UK and started to put Haken Relocation Services together. During that process, I actually realised that it is actually an industry in itself in America, and I joined an association called NASM, which is the National Association of Senior Move Managers. There isn't an association here in the UK, so that people like myself that have set up these businesses in the last year or two, generally you'll find are a member of NASM. We all have to work under a code of ethics, we all have to be CRB checked, and we all have insurance, but we all follow the same set guidelines. What we actually do, we help people. We help people who perhaps have physical limitations, who can't physically help themselves with what they need to achieve. We help people who don't have family there to assist them with all the processes. People who perhaps need to move quickly, their health conditions may have declined, may have had a stroke, may have Alzheimer's, dementia, and need to relocate to a retirement village or into a care facility. Perhaps families live quite a long way, quite a distance from their parents, and can't be there to help them with all the processes. Families aren't able to take time off work. This day and age, you know, both husband and wife are working. They don't always have the time to be there to support their parents. People just actually don't know where to start. A lot of people have been perhaps in their home for 30 or 40 years. They've got a loft full of, you know, boxes, a garage full of garden tools and things, and they don't know what to do with it all. And they actually become quite polarised. And so often they are living in accommodation that isn't actually suitable for their needs, but are completely daunted about what lies ahead. And perhaps just families who are struggling with the current situation that they're in, or their parents are in. Why our role is important is that we are neutral, and we can offer an unbiased opinion. We're an objective third party, and we don't have an emotional stake in the move. Clients, they don't want to impose on their family. A lot of people don't want to admit to their family that they actually need help and support. They think their children are very busy and they don't want to complicate their lives further. They look for us for complete trusting support, and we're often actually the last person that they'll tell the story of their life to. you know, when we're going through all their possessions, it's often a time of real reflection, and they often relive the life they've led, and we are there to actually listen to that story. They want stress and anxiety removed, and we can come in and do that because we project manage everything for them, and they can be sure that they can get from where they need to be to where they're going to go. And we can help them assist with all the aspects of downsizing their possessions and getting them perhaps rid of the things that they really hold dear and find quite hard to release. Just to give you an idea of some of the clients I've been dealing with, I had a lovely 93-year-old lady. She was no longer able to drive. She had been driving, but she had a blackout in the car and had a post, wrote off her car, and realised that perhaps being on the road wasn't going to be the way forward. She was a very religious lady, and she liked to go to various church group meetings, and so the one main group that she went to was down in West Sussex. She was living in Croydon at the time and felt that she wanted to move down to West Sussex where she could be around her friends down there. So I was brought in. She had no family and friends. Well, she had no family, sorry. At 93 she'd actually outlived all her family and she had no children of her own. So she didn't have people there to help her. She was having some memory loss, and she at 93 was completely physically unable to help herself with all the moving process. She was very accepting of the situation, was happy to move, but I came in and helped her go through everything in her home. I helped put her property on the market. I interviewed the estate agents with her. I organised financial guidance for her as well, and actually helped her settle into her retirement complex. Very vibrant lady, absolutely lovely, and I'm still working with her. We're just closing at the moment on the sale of her property. Another lady I had was Mrs. Craig, 78-year-old lady. She had arthritis and Parkinson's. She was becoming completely isolated in her home. She was living in a penthouse apartment but couldn't actually leave her home on her own. She wasn't cooking for herself. She'd lost 10 kilos in the space of a couple of months. And the only outside people that she really saw were her carer that came in the morning and in the evening, and a lady that was one of her neighbours who came to make sure that she was eating something. I went to see her on the second occasion, and I had actually left something in the hallway and went back to get it. She was sitting in the lounge, and when I got back into the lounge, she was sort of slumped in her chair looking skyward, and I thought, oh no, I've had my first death on the job. And I tapped Mrs. Craig and I said, you know, are you all right, dear? And she said, yes, I'm fine. But she was actually so overwhelmed about how she was going to get to her retirement complex and the thought of how she would do it. She was physically exhausted, she had lost weight. So luckily over the course of time we got her to where she needed to be. She was a lady who had had a passion for fashion. She had 8 wardrobes of clothes and probably 20 drawers. It took me 8 hours just to go through the downsizing of her wardrobe. We had to put things into various piles, and then had boxes that would go into storage for winter clothes that maybe she would wear again. She had travelled the world. Everything had a story, where she bought her clothes, where she'd worn it to. There were more hats, gloves and scarves than you could poke a stick at. And it took me hours and hours to tag all the clothes that were going to the retirement home, because everything had to be labelled. She was a very sweet lady. She is now very much settled into her retirement home. I helped her set up her room. I made sure that the furniture that she was going to take would be suitable. We put pictures up on the walls. I've been back to see her several times, and I said to her, how are you settling in? And she said, oh, I'm really enjoying it here. She said, we had a musician come to play the other day. And I said, oh, that's really lovely. And she said, yes. She said, he sang Pack Up Your Old Kit Bag and the White Cliffs of Dover. And she said, I don't know why people think old people like those sort of wartime songs. She said, I really like Elton John. And she said, I like Elbow and I like Coldplay. And I thought, well, I know who Coldplay are, but I'm not quite sure who Elbow is, and I'm not going to let you know that one. But she was a very with it lady. We had some very funny incidences as we were going through it all. You know, not only was she leaving her life in the apartment, but she was also releasing things that had been her husband's. Her husband had died 2 years previously. You know, you come across things like the false teeth, the painting shirt that he had, his sets of bowls, all those sort of things that she'd sort of held on to, and we were releasing those as well. We came across one very funny bag of things, or I did. she had had her granddaughter over to help her pack up a few possessions, and there was all these bags sitting by her bed, and I thought, I better just go through all that before we actually move. And I came across this bag, very smart bag with rope handles on it, and inside was this very large red vessel, and I thought, oh, I wonder what this is. Lifted it up, it was actually quite heavy, and she was sitting in the kitchen in her chair, and I would take things into the kitchen and say, you know, do you want this, do you not? So I clambered in with this bag, with this red vessel, and I said to Mrs. Craig, I said, do you have a genie in this bag? And she said, no dear, she said, that's my husband's ashes. So I sort of at that point wanted to dig a bit of a hole and think, oh my God, what do I do from here? But she saw the funny side of it, so it wasn't too bad. So what we sort of do is we go and we organise piles, basically, piles of things that we're going to keep, that will move to the new home, things that will sell or go to charity, and then things that will be discarded. What we always try and do is not only help the client, but actually set the client tasks in between our visits so that they feel like they're empowered and they're in control of their move as well, and that it's not all left up to us to make decisions. During the time of perhaps parents moving, it's also a difficult time for the family as well. Not only are they coping with their own emotions, but they're trying to cope with the added responsibility that a move from parents may entail. They're seeing changes in their parents, not, you know, from being a child you're actually becoming a carer, which can also be quite difficult for family. And it's a role reversal. You know, you're used to being the child, your parents always being there for you, you're actually taking on a complete role reversal, you're there to look after your parents. So it can be quite a demanding time for people. Just points to remember when dealing perhaps with your own family, that if you have older parents that are needing to go through these processes, that just try and introduce the idea of downsizing slowly. Perhaps the home that they're living in, maybe a 4-bedroom home, they might only be living in a few rooms of the home. They don't need to be in such a large property. They don't need the overheads and the expenditure of running such a large home. Their home may no longer suit their needs. They may become actually very isolated where they're living. You know, often people are living in villages these days where the bus services are being cut. They can't get into town the same way they could. They're not getting to see the groups and being involved in the community as they were before. And that actually, you know, downsizing and releasing some of the capital, likely, you know, it's putting that money into investments that will actually support their care moving forward. So people aren't always earning a lot of money with their investments in the bank at the moment, looking at other ways that they can release some capital. For the future, the ageing population is seen as one of the greatest challenges facing contemporary society because of the many social, economic and political implications that it involves with our ageing population. And just some statistics from the Guardian. The oldest age groups is the fastest growing, and the amount of people 85 will actually double in the next 25 years. So we really do have major concerns with how we're going to cope with an ageing population moving forward. People are living longer, and they don't always have surviving children to care for them, or the children are actually older themselves and aren't able to support them. So services like mine, where we can go in there and be of assistance, is really going to be very important moving forward. So this is just basically a rundown of what I do. Our service is fairly new out there. A lot of people don't know that we are there to help. They don't know to Google it. So if you do know people that do need these sort of services, also over Christmas, it's a time to think that you're actually getting together with your family that you may not have seen for some time, or some older relatives that you may not have seen. And you know, it's perhaps a time to think, well, there is support if they need it. You know, are they actually able to support themselves where they're living? Is their home too big? Can they afford the heating bill? So if I can help anybody moving forward,